Friends, as you know, this channel is about providing analysis, not providing you news. But today's topic is probably the most important analysis that I would have done in this show. Brace yourselves. The global crisis coming is going to be bigger than COVID. Its magnitude will be decided by the length of this war. Should this war stretch to the end of March, you will see a real global crisis developing. But even now, the whole world would most likely go into a recession. When Napoleon had killed a duke in 1804, a commentator had said, "It's worse than a crime. It's a blunder." Because a crime only covers the moral aspects of an action. A blunder has economic, strategic costs which can affect your entire future. Instead of a regime change only in Iran, it might lead to a regime change in America. It could lead to regime change in large parts of the global south. I will explain. But before I do so, please like and subscribe to this channel, and any content that you like, that is any short or long video, please share it with your friends. We have very few subscribers right now. A lot of effort, a lot of money goes into this. So help the show if you find you're gaining anything from it. Well, some of the biggest sufferers will be in the global south. That is, in large parts of Africa, Latin America, and for us here in South Asia, it would be terrible. And without us having deserved any of the blowback because we didn't have a hand in this decision. Well, the first thing it will do is it's going to push up global fossil fuel prices, specifically oil, LPG, LNG. Oil, as you know, is trading upward of $100 a barrel, Brent crude. If you live anywhere in India, you know that there is a generalized LPG shortage. In fact, there is at no price are cooking gas cylinders available right now. Even though the shortfall is only 25%, the government is claiming right now. The problem is people have started hoarding. They are anticipating, and rightly so, that there will be a much more acute shortage going forward. So many of the smaller kitchens, small dhabas and restaurants where poor people eat, middle class people eat, are now out of gas. Soon even domestic consumers, those who are at home, are going to experience this. But this is only the beginning of the crisis. Over 88% of India's oil, as you know, is imported. Once oil prices go up, prices of all commodities will go up. And as you have seen with our stock market, we haven't seen such a big correction of the stock market in a very long time. So far, it's been around 10% in India, but it could go far higher. And prices of almost every product, not just fuel and fuel-related or transport-related products, is going to go up. The second factor which is going to affect the global south is that 33% of the world's fertilizers were made in the GCC, in the Persian Gulf, Middle East region. So if fertilizer prices go up because there will be a generalized fertilizer shortage, you will again see a problem in the global south. Many of these economies were already low on food production. So from Latin America to Africa to South Asia, Southeast Asia, you're going to see food shortages. Moreover, when the price of oil and natural gas, etc., LPG will go up, the shortage will be mostly felt in the global south because the global south will no longer be able to afford this oil and gas, and therefore it will move to the global north because the global north will be able to pay the higher prices which we can't. This could push several economies and several countries over the edge. Countries such as Egypt, Pakistan, which is largely dependent on IMF bailouts and loans. Therefore, Asim Munir could have a hard time. Bangladesh with its new government, Nepal with its new government, Sri Lanka with its fairly new government. All of these countries, there could even be domestic political repercussions for Prime Minister Modi here in India. There is a big financial crisis also looming, specifically in the United States. That is, so far the US stock market has not reacted to this change. This is because of two reasons. One, corporate earnings have been good in the US, the economy was doing well, and the AI companies, etc., were also generating large profits. But this is partly also because the US stock market investors are expecting this war to be over pretty soon. They know that President Trump always has his eye on the stock market. Even in the first term, he used the stock market as a barometer of his success. So he won't tolerate, they believe, a very steep decline in the stock market. But this is assuming that stopping the war is in President Trump's hands. Because in any war, the other side also has a vote, has a veto. That is, if Iran keeps firing the missiles, even if they come down to a very low number as they have already, and the mining of the Persian Gulf and Hormuz that they have already done will mean that, combined with the damage that the oil infrastructure has already taken due to missile and drone hits, will take a long time to repair, clean up, removing mines. And much of oil and gas production is done in a way that it expects continuous production. That is, if the production is stopped, then it takes a long time to restart it. If you include the fact that you will have to repair the oil terminals, the refineries, the gas fields, etc., and you will already have to first move out the ships that are already filled with gas and oil, which are already there in the Persian Gulf. That itself will take a long time for them to move out, then come back empty and again refill. Even if the war was to stop tomorrow, it would take weeks, maybe months for production to come back online at the same rate as it was before the war. And it doesn't look like the war is about to stop tomorrow. That's why I have said that what President Trump and Netanyahu have done is worse than a crime. It's a blunder. Another big area of concern is Germany and Europe. Friends, since 2022, when the Russia-Ukraine war started, Germany and its economic model was already in trouble because energy costs had increased a lot for Germany because they were importing mostly their gas and oil from Russia, as was most of Europe. But Germany, like most other countries, is dependent on its SME, small and medium enterprise sector, not necessarily the large industry only. And Germany was to a large extent dependent upon manufacturing. Now, energy was one part of the hit that German industry took. The other part was that China's manufacturing capacity has increased so much. Over 50% of the world's industrial robots were installed in China last year. So China is now so invested in manufacturing, and it's so cheap that it is, especially in certain areas such as solar cells, over 80% of the world's solar cells are manufactured in China. Over 80% of the world's EVs are manufactured in China. That German industry and European industry in general has come under intense pressure because cheaper goods are available, especially goods for the new economy, all these EVs, solar cells, etc. And batteries. Over 80% of the world's batteries are made in China. China controls over 95% of the world's rare earths. This already meant that the German industrial model, the whole German economic model, and because Germany is the surplus economy in Europe, that is, it produces more than the rest of Europe and it has more earnings, which then it uses to subsidize the rest of Europe through loans, etc. Whenever there's a problem, there's a deficit, which means the whole European model is in danger. And now, because of this new war and rising energy costs, this German model is further in danger. If it leads to the German small and medium enterprise section, and even large manufacturers like Volkswagen have said that they will get rid of 50,000 jobs. And when you combine that with the industrial problems that England is having, what France is experiencing, and what the rest of Europe is experiencing, it will mean that a generalized decline in Europe. Of course, there is a way out for Europe. That is, if they were to invest heavily in the green energy sector, in electric vehicles. But to take out funds for that will mean running large deficits. This comes at a time when they have to anyway ramp up their defense expenditures because of the Russian threat and the Ukraine war. So Europe can revive itself with a large amount of Keynesian deficit financing and large amounts of state spending. But this has two problems. There are two problems in overcoming this. The first is that Europe is very disunited. So to get any unified plan going is difficult. Even if they do this, there is a second problem. Psychologically, Europe deals with economic problems by going for austerity, by cutting state expenditure, by cutting welfare, by cutting wages. That is not going to work this time. Thirdly, Europe has been so mentally dependent on American security. That is, all the European leaders currently are of that generation which depended on America for their security. For them to get rid of this mindset itself will be a big task. So these three issues are going to face Europe. Now I come to Russia and Ukraine. People are saying Russia has gained from this war because energy prices have gone up. Yes, in the short term it has gained. But believe me, in the medium to long term, Russia is not going to gain out of this war at all. Because it has destroyed so much of its economy in the Ukraine war. It has spent so much on defense that it has taken away investments from all other sectors. And it no longer has access to Western investments, Western technology, etc. Ukraine also is gaining in the short term because there's a huge demand for Ukraine's drone defenses, Ukraine's arms industry, because Ukraine has gained a lot of experience in the last 4 years, which it's trying to benefit from. They're getting a lot of orders from especially the GCC and Gulf countries. So their defense industry is going to boom for a bit. But both of these countries are short-term gainers, but I don't know if they'll gain in the long term. Finally, the GCC countries and Iran, they are losers. GCC is definitely going to lose out of this war. We have seen that not only have their oil terminals, oil fields been damaged, that is the main source of revenue for these countries, but they've suffered a huge reputational risk. That is, their airports, their airlines were considered safe. They were hubs. Places like Qatar, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, etc. They were considered as hubs for global travel. That reputation is gone now. Their airline industry will take a long time to recover. Moreover, many of these countries used to get almost a third of their GDP, for example, UAE, from tourism and travel. Are tourists going to return to Dubai easily or to Qatar? Sure, they will slowly return, but it will take a long time before they ever come back to the levels before the war. Thirdly, these countries were hugely dependent upon real estate investments, especially places like Dubai, etc. But even others like Qatar, to some extent, even Abu Dhabi, Oman had entered this race. We are looking not just at a real estate recession, but possibly a real estate crash in these countries. And when that happens, combined with tourism, combined with oil, these economies will go into huge recessions. Even a country like Saudi Arabia, which was so far not that badly affected, is going to have trouble implementing its 2030 economic plan. Mohammed bin Salman might not get a lot of foreign investment going, and Aramco will suffer quite a few losses and will take a long time to come back online. Of course, the biggest loser in all of this might be Iran itself. I saw a video on the 10th day of the war. A woman in Tehran was crying. She was saying in 10 days itself, half of Tehran has been destroyed. What will be left after another 10 days? The US and Israel have not just destroyed the military, have not just destroyed the government, but they have destroyed the infrastructure of that country, its manufacturing base. Thousands have been killed, and the regime still survives, which means there will not be peace there. What Israel is aiming for, and now increasingly the Americans also, is to create a Syriafication, that is, do what they did to Syria, leaving it a shell with a civil war, with completely destroyed infrastructure, and possibly ethnic and civil war. Because as I had explained, only half or a little more than half of Iran's population is ethnic Persian. The rest consists of, Kurds, Baloch, Azeris, and Marsh Arabs. This will not be in the interest of Iran, but will not be in the interest of GCC countries as well. Because instability there will mean that you can bet your last dollar that there will be huge instability in the oil market and for the real estate market in the GCC countries, and as I said, travel. This will not be in the interest of the United States also, because if oil prices keep going up the way they are, and if there is a busting of the AI bubble in the US stock market, it might lead to regime change in the US. Trump himself might be in danger through two ways. Not only would his party lose the midterm, but if they lose big in the midterm, it could lead to impeachment proceedings against him. The only real gainer out of all of this is Netanyahu. That is, Netanyahu can go back and say to his people, look, I have removed the Iranian threat. So what if I screwed up on October 7th, 2023? I've destroyed the threat of Hamas and Hezbollah in Lebanon and Iran. And even if there is no regime change in Iran, he can still say, I have weakened them so much. I have created mass civil war there. They'll never again be a threat for us. In the short term, this will be good for Israel's security because there will be no large power left in the Middle East other than, say, Turkey. And Israel will become the hegemon of the Middle East. But in the long term, this will be extremely bad for Israel because, as I have explained to you earlier, a majority of America's youth, as much as 70 to 75%, is now turning against Israel. And as I've told you before, Israel's approval ratings have fallen to as little as 36, 35% in the United States. Sympathy for Palestinians is around 44%, highest ever. It used to be around 18 to 20% earlier. Israel's approval used to be around 50 to 60%. More and more Americans are saying we went into this war because of Israel. And they're right. America has repeatedly gone into Middle Eastern wars because of Israel. I've explained in my previous videos how they were responsible for the destruction of Syria. They didn't want Obama to intervene, etc. They were responsible for the destruction in Iraq. Netanyahu himself pushed for it. They are responsible for the destruction of Iran. I've explained to you how in previous videos Netanyahu pushed for this war and used the Israel lobby in Washington. So even many adults are turning against Israel, especially in the Democratic Party. In fact, something strange has happened, as I explained to you. Democratic politicians are openly saying we will not accept funds from APEC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. They are openly saying there was a genocide in Gaza. Big politicians such as Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, is saying he won't accept funds. There was a genocide. Our policy has been too much influenced by Israel. We have to cut aid to Israel. Now, if this relationship sours US-Israel, it won't affect US that much. It's a superpower, but it will affect Israel deeply in the long term. So overall, friends, everybody loses. The only person who gains is Benjamin Netanyahu. And maybe in the short term, Israel, but not in the long term. So please leave your comments, what you think. I'll try as much as possible to read them and respond to them. I'll keep bringing you updates. Keep watching, sharing, and help me spread the word. Until next time, see you.